Hey everyone, today I will be breaking down all of Sora's combo finishers from each KH game he is featured in. I will be showing Sora's base, modifiers, drives, and the list goes on. Keep in mind that I will only be focusing on Sora's combo finisher, and as for the non-number title series, I will not be including his sleight and command decks into the video, because even though those finishers are included in those games, they are not entirely tied to Sora's combo finisher toolkit. Now with all that being said, sit back and relax and enjoy the video. Let's start with Sora's default ground finisher in KH1. Sora's default ground finisher has Sora do a full horizontal swing hitting anything in Sora's way, which is not a bad finisher for early game crowd control, which by the way is a slow finisher but does get replaced by other finisher as he progresses. Here we have Mermaid Sora's default combo finisher. This combo finisher has to be the weakest finisher ever because it's the only combo finisher Sora has, because this world pretty much strips Sora of all his cool abilities, which I'm glad they somewhat fixed in KH3, but we'll get to that later. This combo finisher is trash because it lacks crowd control, not to mention this finisher has Sora swing his Keyblade upward, leaving Sora open only to get hit right after. It would have been nicer to have some cool mermaid combo finishers, but this is what Mermaid Sora got. Lion Sora had it better than this. Next up we have Blitz, which is a ground combo finisher that knocks its target ahead with an overhead jump attack. This combo finisher will come out whenever Sora is fighting a single target, but if Sora is surrounded, Sora will use his default ground finisher instead. Blitz is a quick and snappy combo finisher that comes out pretty fast and does not leave Sora open as much because the finisher ends quickly, not leaving Sora frame trapped. It's also great that Blitz does not get held back by RNG like some of the other ground finishers Sora has, so I say Blitz is a-okay in my book. Here we have Ripple Drive, which is a Final Mix exclusive ground finisher. Ripple Drive is an AoE finisher that hits multiple enemies around Sora while also sending them flying, giving Sora a little bit of breathing room for a short period. This is one of my favorite crowd control combo finishers because it is not tied behind the annoying 30% chance of unleashing nonsense and will come out no matter what situation Sora is in. Keep in mind Ripple Drive is tied to Sora's max MP value, which determines how much damage Ripple Drive will deal. Next on the list is Stunt Impact, which is a Final Mix exclusive ground finisher. Stunt Impact does exactly what the ability says, and that is stunning an enemy in place, allowing Sora to gain the upper hand in battle, but if Sora has struck a stunned target, they will come out of their stunned state, making it so they can't be infinitely stunned. Stunt Impact is pretty nice to have, especially in crowded situations, giving Sora control of the fight from all angles. The downside to Stunt Impact is that it has a 30% chance of unleashing, and I was only able to do the finisher consistently because of the consistent finisher mod allowing me to use it freely. And the same goes for the other two abilities that have a 30% chance of unleashing will get the same treatment as well. Next up is Zantazuken, which is a Final Mix exclusive ground finisher which Sora obtains after defeating Kurtzisa. Zantazuken is a single target combo finisher that lands a powerful blow to its target. It also works really well whenever Sora lands a critical blow. Zantazuken has Sora spin the Keyblade behind him before dashing at his target, dealing lots of damage to his enemy. As mentioned before, Zantazuken is also stuck on that 30% chance of unleashing. Here we have Gravity Break, which is a Final Mix exclusive ground finisher that Sora can obtain after beating Hercules during the time trial in the Colosseum. Gravity Break has Sora raise the Keyblade behind him while gravity covers the tip of the Keyblade while slamming the Keyblade on the ground, flattening his enemies from the gravity impact. Gravity Break is somewhat okay, but it's not all that good, especially when Ripple Drive and Stunt Impact covers way more range than Gravity Break. The only time Gravity Break has a place to shine is in the unknown fight, since he is weak to gravity based attacks along with Zantazuken, but it sucks not being able to use any of these finishers more often because of the 30% chance of unleashing bullshit. Now let's look at Sora's default air combo finisher. This finisher has Sora spinning around with the Keyblade horizontal, allowing Sora to hit multiple foes that are in Sora's space while airborne. So there's not much to say about this finisher except it's an aerial version of his ground finisher, but that's all about to change right about now. See, Sora's aerial combo finisher has improved and works way better. Here we have Hurricane Blast, which is a Final Mix exclusive aerial combo finisher. Hurricane Blast is a better aerial combo finisher that has Sora spinning 360 with the Keyblade vertically, dealing way more damage than his base finisher, not to mention it works really well when a critical has landed. Hurricane Blast is one of the best aerial combo finishes for good reasons. 1. It's cool looking when Sora is spinning vertically. 2. The hitbox of Hurricane Blast lasts so long that it can parry attacks, meaning there's little risk to using this finisher. The one downside to Hurricane Blast that bothers me is that it will only come out if the target is below Sora, which is kind of annoying, but at least it was fixed to work all the time in KH2, which I will get to real soon in this video. One thing worth pointing out about Hurricane Blast is that it has the uppercut swing at the end of the aerial combo finisher in this game. I always wondered why it was in this game to begin with, especially since Sora lands on the ground too soon before he ever has a chance to do it, unless he was high enough. Only then you would see him use the uppercut swing. Well, that about wraps up the finishers in Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. If you would like to grab a snack or take a break, please do so, and I will see you in the next section of the video. Enjoyed your break? Good, then let's continue this next section with Chain of Memories. Here we have Sora's default ground combo finisher in Chain of Memories. It's pretty much the same as his finisher from KH1, and as for his default air combo finisher, he does the same combo finisher as he did in KH1 as well. So what's the difference, you might ask? The only difference with the combo finisher in Chain of Memories is not the finisher itself, but whenever Sora unleashes a finisher, the screen will zoom in on Sora quickly then pan back right after. Another thing that caught my eyes would be Sora's position while doing the finisher. What do I mean? If Sora is doing a finisher going to the right side of the screen, the keyblade will be in his right hand, but if Sora is doing a finisher going to the left side of the screen, Sora will do the finisher counterclockwise with the keyblade in his left hand. Not sure why this is a thing, but it just is. Moving on. Next on the list is Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix combo finishers, so let's get right into it. First up, we have Sora's default ground combo finisher. This finisher here has Sora do an overhead blitz that comes out whenever Sora is facing a single target, which seems to have a slow startup, but is short-lived since Sora will get better modifiers as he progresses. Sora also has his second default ground combo finisher, which has Sora do a small hop slash spin to hit surrounding foes around him whenever Sora feels ambushed, which is a pretty neat finisher for early game crowd control, and it comes out a bit faster than his overhead finisher. Here we have Finishing Leap, which is a ground combo finisher. This finisher here has Sora leap off the ground to dive his keyblade into the ground, sending multiple foes airborne, allowing the player to set up another attack after. Finishing Leap has a small story here. In the vanilla version of KH2, Finishing Leap was originally learned after defeating the experiment boss fight later in the game, whereas in 2FM, Finishing Leap is learned early after defeating the Volcano Blizzard Lord boss fight. Not having this finisher early in the game was a pain in the vanilla version, and 2FM made it better, especially for critical mode playthroughs where it was really needed. Next up, we have Guard Break. Guard Break is a ground combo finisher that lets Sora bypass an enemy's guard with a piercing attack. Guard Break will unleash whenever Sora is facing a single target. Guard Break also has one parry frame on the startup and during the dashing animation if timed well. Guard Break is a pretty quick ground combo finisher that does not last too long and ends quickly, giving Sora enough time to dodge right after, but Guard Break doesn't come as close to this next finisher on the list. Oh, not even close. Check this out. Right here we have one of the best ground combo finisher in this game called Explosion. Explosion is a god-given ability. This finisher here has Sora send out 3 orbs of light around him, hitting anything around Sora's radius. But wait, there's more. Not only does the explosion hit from all angles, but it also grants Sora a great amount of iframes during the animation, which is my favorite part about this finisher. Explosion also has a story as well. In the vanilla version of KH2, Explosion is learned early after beating the Volcano Blizzard Lord boss fight, but was changed in Final Mix to be learned in late game after the Solar fight. I theorized about why Explosion was moved far in late game, and the only thing that comes to mind was critical mode. If Sora was given this ability in the same place like in the original KH2 but on critical mode, then Sora will plow through each fight with no issues, since critical mode lets Sora do way more damage than the other 3 modes in this game, but that's just my theory. One tiny problem that won't hurt this ability is Sora is frame trapped at the end, since Sora does a small step back after, but other than that, Explosion still owns. Next up, we have Sora's default overhead air combo finisher. Just like his default blitz combo finisher, it will only come out whenever Sora is facing a single target. This finisher comes out pretty fast and has less aim lag, allowing Sora to start out his combo way quicker than his ground finisher. Sora also has his second default air combo finisher that will come out whenever Sora is in a crowded fight. This finisher has Sora do a horizontal swing counterclockwise hitting anything in Sora's path, giving Sora space while airborne, which is not too shabby of a finisher in early game. Here we have Timeless River Boat air combo finisher. Whenever Sora grabs onto the hook, Sora's combo changes to Sora doing a half horizontal slash followed by a keyblade torque before delivering the finishing blow. This finisher is slow mainly because of the inlet that comes after. If Sora is caught in between his finisher right as the reaction command pops up, Sora will get knocked off the hook and will be forced to fight off a few minute bombs to continue the combo again, even if the finisher was already finished. So pick and choose the correct time to use this finisher or else. Next we have Aerial Finish. Aerial Finish has Sora do 4 consecutive slashes to a single target while airborne. Aerial Finish has a long hang time which can leave Sora open most of the time, mainly in mob fights, but it does grant Sora a few parry frames if his swings manage to parry perfectly, that is. One detail that I love about Aerial Finish would be the finger pointing Sora does right as he spins the keyblade behind him before he does the final blow. It really shows just how savage and confident Sora really is in battle. KH2 Sora owns. Yes, I said it. My oh my. Here we have one of the best air combo finisher, Magnet Splash, which is a final mix exclusive finisher. This finisher has Sora spin around counterclockwise while surrounding himself with a magnet force that pulls in multiple enemies before sending them flying with a splash finisher after. Magnet Splash is one of the best crowd control finisher because it has a decent range on how many enemies he can pull all at once, and it doesn't last 3 seconds long like KH3 Magnet Splash. And here's the best part. This finisher also have iframes slash parry frames, giving Sora something in return since this finisher does keep Sora frame trapped mid-air, so that was a nice trade to have, making this finisher not as risky to use. Next up we have the combo finisher that happens in the fight against Roxas. Whenever Sora successfully steals Roxas' Keyblade, Sora is given an extra finisher after one of his finisher has ended. Each time Sora's finisher has unleashed it, the Keyblade that Sora stole from Roxas will attack right after, hitting him multiple times, giving Sora an extra finishing plus by default. This finisher actually makes an appearance in KH3 during Sora's double form finisher, which seems to last a few frames longer than his KH2 version. Next we have Lion Sora's default ground combo finisher. Lion Sora's ground combo finisher has Sora do a small hop, then lands a somewhat blitz attack, and if he has finishing plus, he can then follow it up with a dashing uppercut as a finisher. Lion Sora's ground combo finishers are somewhat risky in any fight, which I think is not worth using, especially on Giant Heartless, so just stick with his air combo finisher instead. Lion Sora also has another ground combo finisher called Finishing Blast. This finisher has Sora send out a blast of lights to surrounding enemies while also sending them airborne at the same time by pressing square before a finisher, similar to a finishing leap. It's a great way to get them off Sora's back for a bit. Finishing Blast does have a risk factor to it. Every time Sora uses Finishing Blast, Sora will be frame trapped and will not receive any invincibility frames during the finisher either, so be careful while using this finisher. Here we have Lion Sora's default air combo finisher. This finisher has Sora spin counterclockwise multiple times, hitting anything in Sora's way, giving Sora some breathing room for a short period. This finisher is not too bad since Sora stays airborne after this finisher, allowing Sora to set up another attack after, since this finisher has zero inlet, keeping Sora away from danger from down below. Before I move on to the drive forms, I wanted to add this in since it is worth mentioning. I hear this a lot about how you can't defeat a boss with a normal combo like in KH1, since KH2 will not let Sora defeat any boss with a normal combo unless that attack happens to be a finisher. And they are right. In KH2, whenever Sora manages to get any boss down to the last health, they will be left with 1 HP remaining, and a normal combo would not finish them off, and they can only be defeated by a finisher for it to count. But what most players may not know is that there are plenty of attacks in KH2 that have finisher properties to them that can be used to defeat the boss without ever having to use a finisher. So here are some of the attacks in KH2 that have finisher properties. Here they are. First up, we have Valor Form's ground combo finisher, Brave Shot. This finisher has Sora strike both his Keyblade down on the ground, sending out a red energy light while knocking his enemy airborne to set up another combo after if you choose to do so. It's a pretty straightforward finisher that comes up pretty fast while also granting Sora a small parry frame upon impact. The second ground finisher that comes with Valor Form is Brave Beat, which will unleash on nearby enemies, striking anything around Sora with a powerful combo finisher while also protecting Sora at the same time. Brave Beat is a pretty neat finisher to have but can leave Sora wide open due to the finisher leaving Sora floating for a short period, so be careful. Here we have Valor Form's air combo finisher Sonic Strike, which has Sora spears an enemy with one of his Keyblade, dealing massive damage to a single target on the field, knocking them off their feet. Sonic Strike can be used relatively early by pressing Square to use the Omega Fanatic to skip straight to his finisher quicker, both grounded or airborne. Sonic Strike is just as risky as Brave Beat since it too leaves Sora wide open after the finisher, but thankfully if you have Finishing Plus, you can then use this next finisher for insurance. This next air combo finisher we have is Sonic N. This finisher will unleash on nearby enemies around Sora with a powerful combo finisher, clearing Sora surrounded while in return granting Sora parry frames with each slash. This finisher is one of my favorite mainly because it makes me feel untouchable during the finisher, plus it's oddly satisfying to watch. Sonic N is also a finisher you would want to use after Sonic Strike to clear Sora's landing space, especially since this finisher drops Sora a few frames faster than Sonic Strike does. Next up we have Wisdom Form's only combo finisher, Shoot. This finisher has Sora shoot out a rapid fire of projectiles at a distant target. Yup, that's it. Unlike some of Sora's other forms, this form comes with a mobile action ability which lets Sora move during any action he is doing, which comes in handy, letting Sora keep a safe distance while still keeping the pressure on his enemies at the same time. Here we have Limit Form's ground combo finisher, Zetsuzuken, which is a returning final mix finisher from KH1. Zetsuzuken works similar to KH1's Zetsuzuken. The only difference with KH2 Zetsuzuken is that it's meant for dealing with single targets, which it was also meant for in KH1, except that finisher was not consistent. KH2 Zetsuzuken comes out freely on a single target while dealing a great amount of damage to the enemy. Also, unlike KH1 Zetsuzuken, this version of Zetsuzuken grants Sora a few parry frames on the starter of the finisher. Speaking of returning finishers, we also have Ripple Drive making a comeback as well. Just like Zetsuzuken, Ripple Drive also made an appearance in 1FM. This finisher will unleash on nearby enemies around Sora on the field while launching them airborne. Frankly, I like KH2 Ripple Drive more than KH1 mainly because it has a bigger range to it compared to KH1 Ripple Drive, while also granting Sora iframes during the finisher. Now let's look at the air combo finisher that comes with Limit Form. Limit Form's only air combo finisher is Hurricane Blast, which I talked about earlier in this video. This finisher works completely different than KH1 Hurricane Blast. Here are the differences. It is not situational like KH1 Hurricane Blast, allowing for Hurricane Blast to unleash more often. It does not drop Sora to the ground too soon like in KH1FM. This finisher also has a multi-hitbox to allow for multiple damage to be dealt to both single and multiple targets. Lastly, just like KH1 Hurricane Blast, this finisher too can also grant Sora parry frames during the finisher as well. Next on the list we have Master Form air combo finisher Master Strike. This finisher comes out when there are one or less enemies on the field, unleashing a powerful combo finisher that hits from all angles and does not whiff against the target either, leaving them little room to escape, unless you hit the revenge value that is. This second air combo finisher that comes with Master Form is Disaster. Disaster is a longer version of Magnet Burst that unleashes when there are more than one enemy on screen, drawing them closer to Sora before delivering the final blow. Unlike Magnet Burst, Disaster has a multi-hitbox that rapidly damages enemies during the finisher. Two things worth mentioning about Disaster is that it does not grant Sora invincibility frames like Magnet Burst, and lastly, he is mobile during Disaster, allowing for free movement during the finisher. Next up is Anti-Form's ground combo finisher. This finisher will unleash when there are one or less enemies on screen. This finisher will have Sora move around the enemy aggressively, dealing multiple damage before finishing the combo off with a downward strike. One thing I just learned while playing around with this finisher is that if you happen to be using a finisher before an oncoming attack, Sora is actually invincible during the finisher, which blew my mind. Anti-Form has another ground finisher as well. This finisher will come out when there are more than one enemy on screen. This finisher has Sora scratch while bouncing around each enemy, doing lots of damage to them in the process. This finisher is also similar to his final art finisher in final form. Next we have Anti-Form's air combo finisher, Anti-Strike. This finisher will unleash when there are one or less enemies airborne. This finisher has Sora kick and scratch rapidly at a single target before ending the combo with a downward attack similar to his ground finisher. And if you have finishing plus, Sora can use his next finisher called Dark Void. This finisher has Sora cast out a dark orb that sends out multiple shadow effects to nearby enemies while damaging them in the process. Also, right before you end Anti-Strike, you can interrupt that first combo finisher and skip straight to his second finisher regardless of the situation he is in. Next on the list is Final Form's ground combo finisher, Final Arcana. This finisher has Sora hurl both his keyblades at a single target on the field, dealing multiple damage to an enemy while also knocking them into the air, allowing Sora to take the fight airborne. Here we have Final Art, which can be used both grounded or airborne. Final Art has Sora zip around each enemy on the field similar to his finisher in Anti-Form while getting rid of several enemies all at once, also granting Sora invincibility frames in the process, for a short period though. Lastly, we have Final Strike. Final Strike is an aerial combo finisher that destroys a single target with both his keyblades going up and down at the same time, dealing multiple damage to an enemy before finishing it off with a downward strike. This finisher also comes with parry frames as well. The best part about this finisher is that it can be used multiple times by using Arrowgun mid combo to restart Final Strike multiple times depending on how many finishing plus Sora has equipped. It's a great way to keep the pressure on his enemies while also getting in a better damage output. Well, that pretty much wraps up all of Sora's combo finishers in 2FM. If you managed to make it this far into the video, I thank you for staying. And if you like what you learned, saw, or whatever the reason was for you to click on this video, feel free to give it a like, and let's move on to the next game on the list. Now that we moved away from the numbered titles for now, let's look at some of the non-numbered games combo finishers, starting with Rechain of Memories. Starting off this section, we have Sora's basic ground finisher that's pretty much the same as the previous game, so I won't go too far into that any longer. Now I will talk about the air combo finishers in Recom. This finisher is pretty much the same as KH1's air finisher but with a different feel to it. As you can see, Sora is a bit floaty during the combo itself, which I will admit works really well for this game. Why? Simple, because unlike KH3, if Sora happens to be doing the air combo near the ground just before the finisher unleashed, Sora will stay committed to finishing the air combo no matter how low to the ground he is, which KH3 can learn a thing or two from, since that game has a really bad habit of turning Sora's air combo finishers into a ground finisher, which ruins the fun of aerial combat. Please don't repeat this in KH4. Please. Next up we have Days, Sora's only basic ground combo finisher, which happens to be Zantetsuken. Since this is Sora's only base finisher in Days, Zantetsuken is free to unleash more often than KH1 wouldn't let him do. Sweet. There's also a wide combo. Yes, a wide combo. Not sure why it's called wide, but anyway, this wide combo will pop out just before a finisher unleashed, allowing Sora to knock an enemy upward, following it up with a hurricane blast, which seems to leave Sora and I guess any other characters who can probably perform this wide combo with a end lag at the end. And since I'm already talking about Hurricane Blast, this is also one of Sora's basic air combo finisher in this game. One difference with Days Hurricane Blast is that Sora does not fall too soon, which I also said earlier about Limit Form's Hurricane Blast, but this is the first time KH1 Sora is able to do a full Hurricane Blast without falling too soon. Great job, Days. Moving on to Recoded, Sora has two basic ground finishers which happen to be situational as well. Sora will use his normal swing when he's surrounded by more than one enemy, and if the target happens to be a distance from Sora, he will use what I guess is supposed to be his KH2 version of the slot dash modifier as a finisher, but without the small twirl at the end. Going airborne, we also have Sora's basic air combo finisher. If Sora is surrounded while airborne, he will use his horizontal swing to clear his space, and if there is one or if the enemy is a distance away from Sora, he will use his overhead aerial strike as a gap closer, similar to his overhead base air combo finisher he does in KH2. I also noticed that you can somewhat cancel the finisher earlier if you have air slide equipped. Recoded had this cool idea of giving certain keyblades that Sora attained after beating each world their own unique combo modifiers to them. So let's start with the Olympian keyblade, starting with the ground combo finisher. The first ground finisher that will unleash with this Keyblade is a somersault blitz strike to a single target on the field, which happens to make a comeback as a default finisher in KH3, which I really want to talk about so bad, but not right now, but soon. Soon. The next finisher associated with this Keyblade is Dodge Slash. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. This finisher will come out when there are more than one enemy around Sora. The best part about this finisher is that it's a shorter version of KH2 Dodge Slash and it's surprisingly faster than KH2 Dodge Slash. The last Keyblade we have here is 3 Wish. The ground combo finisher that comes with this Keyblade has Sora launch an enemy into the air with a powerful upward slash, allowing for the fight to be taken airborne. And lastly, the air combo finisher that comes with this Keyblade has Sora do a quick jab to the enemy with this Keyblade, and if he has finishing plus equipped, he will follow it up with a Hurricane Blast, which works the same way as Dave's Hurricane Blast did. Next on the list we have Dream Drop Distance combo finisher. Right now I sound like a broken record player with these combo finishers here. We've seen these finishers used in KH1, GBA Com, Recon, but with a slight change to the air combat, and now this game? I don't want to bore you all with the same thing I mentioned many times before in this video, so I will speed this up and move on to the last game on the list with something fresh to talk about. Fair enough? Good. Well, that about covers all the non-numbered Cage game combo finishers. The last game we have on the list is Kingdom Hearts 3. So let's begin breaking down all of Sora's combo finishers from that game. First up on the list we have Sora's default ground combo finisher. This finisher has Sora do a full somersault into the air before landing a blitz strike to a single target on the field. This finisher is probably one of the worst default finishers in early game, mainly due to the fact that this finisher takes way too long to unleash, leaving Sora wide open to get knocked out of that finisher. This finisher also sucks to use in crowded situations as well. Now you're probably wondering why not just use air combo finishers instead. Well, let's have a look at Sora's default air combo finisher, shall we? This right here is Sora's default air combo finisher. This finisher has Sora use one of his KH2 version of Aerial Spiral as his default finisher with a slight change to the ending. Both of Sora's default finishers suck in this game. What I dislike is not the finisher itself, but the fact that Sora only has one default finisher when grounded and airborne in this game. Let's look at KH2 for a moment. In KH2, Sora had 2 default finishers, both grounded and airborne to start with, which depended on Sora's situation, which I really liked about KH2 mechanics. But when I look at KH3 finisher, he only has one default finisher when grounded and airborne. It would have been nice to have 2 default finishers in early game instead of 1, since Sora is forced to fight off a few mob fights before ever having access to crowd control, which was a major hassle to deal with on critical mode. Let's take a dive and look at Sora's underwater combo finisher. Remember KH1 underwater combo finisher I mentioned at the beginning of the video? Yeah, that was some finisher, huh? So what did KH3 do with Sora's finisher underwater? Well, they somewhat, and I say somewhat, made it better, but it's still a no for me. Where do I begin? This finisher takes too long to start and end, leaving Sora frame trapped during the animation. This finisher seems to be in favor of helping the enemy recover by pushing them away from Sora, which is noticeable during the underwater section while fighting Gortnor, while also letting the enemy escape before the finisher unleashed, because this finisher takes 1,000 years to unleash. Thankfully, you only have to deal with this 2 times in the game, but other than that, this finisher is trash. Next up we have Speed Slash, which can be used both grounded and airborne. This finisher has Sora do 3 consecutive slashes to an enemy, with the 3rd slash launching the enemy off its feet. Back in the base KH3 days, Speed Slash was a finisher that a lot of players, including myself, would avoid using, mainly because it was such a slow finisher. And it still is, but was given a small tweak with the patch update, allowing the players to dodge or guard mid-combo, which feels a lot better to use. Also, when Speed Slash is equipped, Sora's combo will be decreased by 1 due to the negative combo side effect that comes with it, which allows Sora to get to his finisher quicker. Also, Speed Slash has a different startup while airborne, just something I thought I'd mention as well. Here we have Triple Rush, which is a combo finisher. This finisher has Sora close in on a target while attacking with 3 jabs with his Keyblade. There's really not much to say about this finisher except you won't have to worry about this finisher within his enemies. This finisher also shares the same fate Speed Slash had in base KH3, so I won't repeat myself. One difference with this finisher airborne, which is a small one, is that there are 2 missing flash effects during the first 2 thrusts, while the last thrust has the flash effect at the end. That was something I never noticed until Bow Ross mentioned it during his breakdown. Next we have Magic Flash. Ew, gross, not that Magic Flash. Yes, that Magic Flash. This finisher can be used both grounded and airborne. Magic Flash has Sora issue out a flashlight that hits multiple enemies around Sora, sending them flying airborne. Back before the patch update, Magic Flash had a really low radius, making this finisher not worth using. And guess what? It's still not worth using. No bigger radius to this finisher is not going to make this finisher any better. This finisher has a really long starter to it, which again will leave Sora wide open to get hit, since finishers with iframes is a thing in the past in this game. Get real. Lastly, for Sora's base form, we have Last Charge. This finisher here is by far the best finisher to ever exist in this game. If you manage to clear the base game, Sora was given 6 new modifiers, including Last Charge, which beats Magic Flash by a long shot. This finisher acts as an explosion which hits multiple enemies around Sora, and if Sora is fighting airborne, this finisher hits from top to bottom, which is a nice bonus. The best part about Last Charge is the startup is a lot quicker than his other finisher he has, but does frame charge Sora for a bit at the end of the combo though. It also makes early game mod fights a breeze with New Game Plus as well. So pretty much this finisher is all you'll ever need, assuming you have a completed save, and if not, well then you're pretty much stuck with Magic Flash until then. Now that we're finally finished with base Sora's combo finisher, let's finish this video off with Sora's form change combo finishers. Since second form has too many finishers on it, I will shorten this section by giving a small summary of each finisher this form has to offer. Let's start with second form's ground combo finisher. Second form has 4 ground combo finisher in this form, which starts with this poor for an excuse weak version of explosion, which has been heavily nerfed in this game, not to mention the lack of iframes. Next we have guard break, but without the parry properties it used to have. Here we have launch, which launches an enemy that lets you set up another combo. And lastly we have ripple drop, which lacks iframe in this game. Moving on to the air combo finishers, we have Hurricane Winder, which is an okay finisher as long as you're not too close to the ground. Then you can use this next air finisher, Aerial Finish, which works well for single targets. And lastly we have Magnet Burst, a super long version of Magnet Burst which takes too long to end, leaving Sora wide open because you guessed it, no iframes come with this finisher. Moving on to the next form changer, we have Hero's Origin. The finisher with this form can be used regardless if he's airborne or not. Lightning Circle has Sora summon 12 lightning bolts to surrounding enemies around Sora. This finisher also adds a lightning status effect to enemies as well. The problem with this finisher is that it takes too long to start and end. It also leaves Sora wide open to get blitzed by a charging enemy like what just happened here. But worst of all, you can't air slide or cancel out of this finisher until the animation nearly ends. See, I'm pressing square, I'm pressing square. Moving on, we have double Arrowguns combo finisher, Burst Shot. This finisher has Sora charge up both his arrows before shooting out multiple arrows to any foe that it locks onto, which also helps build up his situation commands faster to unlock his next form, Magic Launcher. This form actually has 2 finishers, which is Rising Blast, which shoots out a larger orb to a distant target. And if Sora is within close range, Sora will attack with the launcher before finishing the combo off with the same finisher. Here we have Hyper Hammer's ground combo finisher, Ground Wallop. This finisher has Sora slam the hammer down on the ground to send surrounding enemies flying airborne. Now this finisher does pack a punch, but the problem with this finisher is that it's too risky. Sora takes 5 years just to start the finisher before actually doing damage. If that's not bad enough, Sora is super glued to the ground and will not be able to dodge out of this finisher until it's fully finished. Even with Omega Finale on, Sora is still at risk of getting hit while performing this finisher. Next we have Hyper Hammer's air combo finisher, Aerial Wallop, which has Sora extend the hammer, allowing Sora to hit surrounding enemies that are grounded or airborne. This finisher is actually pretty good, mainly because this finisher has such a great hitbox to it that anything in its path will get hit regardless of where they're positioned. This finisher also comes out much faster than the ground finisher associated with this form. Powering up into its next form, Drill Punch, we have Corkscrew Uppercut, which has Sora dive underground to follow it up with an uppercut. This is the one thing I like about this finisher, and that is having Sora take cover underground to safety while also coming up from underneath his enemy's foot with a surprising finishing uppercut to a single or crowded target. Next we have Drill Pillars. Drill Pillars allow Sora to send out multiple pillars whenever Sora is surrounded by more than one enemy on the field. Now don't get me wrong, this finisher is not bad at all, but what bothered me was how inconsistent it was. The description for this finisher says when surrounded, countless pillars will unleash. Well, that's true, but most time I would be in this situation where you would expect Sora to use that finisher but will instead use a totally different finisher even when surrounded. But other than that, I'm willing to look the other way since this finisher does pack a punch. And lastly, we have Dire Drill. This finisher has Sora launch at an airborne target with a big drill while also dealing multi-damage to a single target during the dash. This finisher does have a slow startup, but it can't be any worse than the starter Hyper Hammer's ground finisher has. The next form changer we have here is Mirage Staff. The first finisher to unleash with this form is Golden Rays, which has Sora issue out 3 crisscross to an enemy ahead before following up with Revolving Rays, which spawns out 2 rays of light in front and behind Sora while automatically turning to surrounding enemies. I don't think this should come as a surprise, but this finisher frame traps Sora as usual, leaving Sora wide open to get hit in between the combo. Mirage Staff has another finisher which happens to come from Sora's clones. If Sora uses a dodge in this form, Sora can summon clones that can shoot multiple projectiles before finishing the combo with a bigger blast of projectiles. This next form we have is Agile Claws. The combo finisher for this form has Sora increase the claw size before driving his claws towards his enemies, dealing multiple damage while also moving forward to keep up the pressure. Going into his next form we have Twin Yo-Yos, which comes with 2 combo finisher. This first finisher has Sora do a backspin while hitting enemies vertically before finishing the combo off by walking the dog. That finisher is just, well, bad. Long story short, both of these foreign combo finishers will definitely leave Sora wide open. Moving on. Here we have Blizzard Claws. This combo finisher is pretty much a reused Agile Claws combo finisher but with a blizzard effect to it. So let's move on to the next version of this form. This next form, Blizzard Blade, has some different movesets which includes 2 ground finishers and 1 air combo finisher. The first finisher has Sora spin towards an enemy almost like a drill, dealing multi-damage to the enemy. And as for the second finisher, Sora will kick off the ground, sending out a giant ice shard that freezes multiple enemies in place before sending them flying. And as for the air combo finisher, Sora will dash at his enemy with the finisher he used earlier before ending the combo with a diagonal strike. Next up we have Nano Arms. There's really not much to say about the combo finisher in this form. Pretty much all Sora does is summon a giant fist that flies towards an enemy. Whee! Next on the list we have High Wind's combo finisher. This is one of my favorite finishers, not gonna lie. This finisher has Sora slightly dash towards his enemies with his spears while being aided by multiple spears, dealing rapid damage before launching them into the air before raining down upon them with multiple spears hitting anything in Sora's radius. Such a sick finisher. Moving on to Storm Flag, we have 2 combo finishers in this form. The first finisher has Sora spin the flag above his head, hitting surrounding foes while sending them flying airborne, following it up with a jab that issues out a burst of wind that knocks multiple enemies away, clearing Sora's surrounding. Here we have a copycat of double Arrowguns and Magic Launcher. Pretty much Hunny Blaster and Hunny Launcher combo finishers do the same thing as the previous form I showcased. The only difference with this is that the Hunny will have a chance of slowing enemies down for a short period for both forms, so let's just move on. Wow, what a surprise, another copycat form changer. Grand Chef's combo finisher is pretty much the same as Hero Origin's combo finisher except with a fire AoE instead, so what I said about Hero's Origin will apply for this form as well. Deja vu. Here we have another copycat of Hyper Hammer and Drill Punch. As mentioned before with the other form copycats, the combo finisher for the forms are pretty much the same as the previous one. One other thing to mention about Boom Hammer is that it does not have the Omega Finale ability, but it's not like it would matter anyway since the finisher is slow. Now with all those copycats out of the way, here is Rage form combo finisher. The first combo finisher for this form starts with Sora spinning around on his keyblade to hit surrounding foes. He then teleports into thin air before sending out 6 red slash effects before scratching around himself, finishing the combo off with a small AoE finisher. And if you happen to use Wrist Charge, the final blast from the combo finisher will do a great amount of damage with a bigger AoE finisher. Next up we have Dark form and Light form's finishers. Both of these forms have some of Sora's KH2 finishers. Let's start with the ground finisher. First we have the fastest Zantetsuken followed by a finishing leap before leaping higher to before a Dark Break, which I think Riku has used. And as for Light form, instead of jumping after finishing leap, he would use Black Hole, which summons a pillar of light sending foes flying. Sora also has 2 of the same air combo finishers for both forms, which has Sora slashing around sending enemies flying before finishing the combo with a charging attack dealing multiple damage. Let's check out Double form's combo finisher. The first finisher, Double Form, has this bridge shot that issues out light and dark effects to anything in its path. His next finisher is Sonic Strike before ending the combo with multiple light beams similar to the finisher during Rox's boss fight in KH2. Double Form also has another finisher that happens airborne, which has Sora summon light and dark AoE around him, which I can't tell is situational or not. Lastly, we have Final Form. Ultimate Form. The combos in this form are pretty wild. It has Sora summon a large amount of Keyblades around him, hitting surrounding enemies around Sora before slamming the Keyblade downward, sending the Keyblade outward, hitting his enemies. Well, that pretty much concludes this video. I went back and forth with myself about scripting this video or not, but could not pass up an opportunity like this to voice my thoughts on Sora's finishers the right way instead of using text to get my point across. The reason I made this video was because of KH4. I want KH4 to do really well with the combo finishers in that game. When I look at KH3 combo finishers, it's more about flashy combos but doesn't have any weight to them like KH2 finishers did. I'm not asking for a rehashed KH2 mechanic. What I really want to see from KH4 is its own unique style of finishers that are not too flashy while still having some cool styles to them like KH2 did. What I am saying is that I want KH4 to do better than KH2 and 3. That's all. Until next time, thanks for watching and everyone have a blessed day.
It's finally over.
Oh.